Hello. I'm English, and I'm also Calvin, and with me are Alan, who is also English.
Sorry, are we doing whatever happened to Baby Jane? Or
Yes, I'm doing my Victor Buono impression.
I'll do Victor Buono's mother. Here, what's going on here? You going to get a job as a piano player or something?
oh, was he meant to be English?
Yeah, there's that whole bit when he's having tea with Betty Davis, and he's like, "Yes, I'm English."
Oh, I thought he was doing like a stand.
I think he's
on airs.
putting on.
I thought he was doing an Oliver Hardy voice.
He does come very Oliver Hardy at some point.
Yeah. Anyway, Alan.
Hello.
And Sol.
Hello.
Well, we are looking at Whatever Happened to Baby Jane, which is a bit out of our usual oeuvre because it's an old film.
Black and white.
It's not even got colour.
No killings. Actually, no, one killing. 1.5 killings.
There's loads of killings. So, Calvin, would you like to explain why we're doing this film?
We are doing this film. We're doing it now. This one got pushed back. We were supposed to do it earlier on in the year when I was intending for it to tie into the TV show Feud, which was quite popular at the start of the year. So we're talking about Whatever Happened to Baby Jane now because it got pushed back because of the release of Deep Blue Sea 2, which meant that we brought forward Deep Blue Sea in order to tie in with that, and I think we can all agree that was worth it. So that's why we're looking at this now, but nonetheless, it is a classic.
It's just one of our curious little choices. We throw in at something a little bit different.
Well, you know, we always try to look at things with a sequel bent to them, and I think this one, whilst never having spawned a direct sequel, has spawned some interesting...
Hush, hush, sweet Charlotte.
Well, yep, that, as well as a remake and Feud, and a whole subgenre of horror films, you could argue. So that's why I picked it. I think it's going to be an interesting one to look at. I saw it for probably about the 5th time for the purpose of this podcast, and I have quite a different viewing of it now, actually, to what I had before. So did you guys see it before, or did you just come to it for this podcast because I picked it?
You made me watch it a while ago, because we used to do a thing where we'd recommend each other films that we'd, like, curated for each other.
Yeah.
And then Calvin, like, tanked the whole thing and upset a load of friends because he just, like, stopped doing it and wouldn't respond to their messages, and they were trying to phone him. And he was like...
When you select films that are, like, not available on DVD and you can't find them anywhere, the only ones that I left were ones that I physically could not find anywhere. And that was Sean's fault.
Well, unfortunately, I think the ultimate death for that was us doing the podcast because we just end up watching the stuff for this all the time.
Yeah.
But anyway, I had seen it before, but long enough ago that I couldn't really remember much about it. So it was fairly fresh to me this time round.
Okay, interesting. Well, yeah, for those who don't know, it stars Betty Davis and Joan Crawford as washed-up actresses who are also sisters and live in a big creepy house in Los Angeles, and the story is sort of a just woman going mad, really, or women going mad. But yeah, it sort of spawned the subgenre of what is it, hagsploitation, psycho biddy, where you take a formerly glamorous actress and make them look ugly and have them go nuts and possibly kill a few people.
I mean, not that I don't believe it's a subgenre, but you say the subgenre of this as if we're all intimately familiar with it. I honestly don't think I've ever seen a film in this subgenre other than Whatever Happened to Baby Jane. Are there any notable examples that I'm forgetting about? Or
Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte?
Yeah, I've not seen that. I did try to obtain it to watch for this episode, but I couldn't get hold of it in time.
Straight Jacket?
No.
Anyway, I mean, they exist. I think they were bigger in the 60s and 70s. I don't think we see them as much anymore.
Can I put my cards right out here on the table for everyone to see straight away?
Certainly.
I didn't really like the film. And I'm going to be pointing out a lot of things I didn't like. I haven't quite got the context of when it was released to understand why it did such business and gained
it's
such a
fair.
reputation.
I must say, I had a really similar thought watching it again the other day for this. It was really odd to me that this was such a big hit. It doesn't strike me like something that audiences in the 60s would have gone for, really.
It's definitely a hangover from Psycho. I mean, that seems obvious.
Yeah, absolutely.
But when I was reading about the Wikipedia and all that, and there's a thing here, it says, the film's then unheard of and controversial plot meant that it originally received an X rating in the UK. Now, that jumped out to me because I didn't watch this and think, whoa, this is out there for 60s, man.
Yeah,
I didn't expect to see this sort of thing. It didn't jump out at me as controversial or anything unheard of.
What was controversial about it?
Just dealing with sort of mental people or what? I don't.
I think so, yeah. I think the fact that it's about first of all, it's starring, a pair of older ladies. One of them's going mad. I think there's also an element of, like, Bette Davis is, I would say, very much the star, and she's a villain. She kills people. She does terrible things, and yet we're still asked to, sympathise with her in some scenes. There are entire scenes of her sort of just...
Are we?
Trying to understand... Well, yeah, I think so. I mean, when she's, like, on the floor in front of the mirror with the harsh light on her and she's crying and... Drinking. And doesn't know how she's going to get out of the situation. I think she's a very sympathetic character.
Yeah, I mean... This is something to go on to, I think. The characterizations of the two main characters, in that there is no subtlety to it and there is no grey area. I think Jane is a total cunt from beginning to end, and you kind of feel sympathetic for her because you get the impression that she's actually losing her mind rather than just being nasty sometimes. And Blanche is just kind of the put upon, well, let's maybe I could try this. Oh no, it didn't work. And they're just like that all the way through. There's no development. And then,
I'd just like to point out for our American listeners that we're English, so when we call a woman a cunt, it isn't sexist, because we call men cunts as well. All right, carrying on.
It's cultural.
To your point, actually, Alan, on the thing about the character journey, I had a bit of a different experience watching it this time, because I watched it with my boyfriend who'd never seen it before. We'd watched Feud, but this was the first time watching Baby Jane, and he was quite the harsh critic of it and did not enjoy the film at all.
But he's not...
and I think...
Does he watch a lot of older films? Like, just out of interest, like, where's he coming from?
A lot of the ones that he's seen, like I've shown him, like Psycho, showed him that, really liked that. Jaws, enjoyed that. Star Wars, fell asleep.
Yeah, you know what? It sounds like to me, like, the first two, he was like, all right, he really loves this film. I'll pretend to like it for him. But now he's like, oh, for fuck's sake, this is like the fifth one of these shitty old films he's made me watch. I'm sick of it.
You've been going out long enough now. Yeah, you can stop pretending.
Well, to your point, though, Alan, because the film is, in a way, it's almost like The Incredibles, which we talked about last week, in that it has this staggered opening, like we see Baby Jane and her sister Blanche when they are very young children, and Baby Jane is a vaudeville performer. And then we jump forward to the 30s, where they're established actresses, and then we move forward to what is contemporary 1962. I was waiting for I'm trying to identify, in hindsight, what is the inciting incident that kind of sets everything off, because what you were saying about Jane, you kind of do get a sense of her sort of mentally unraveling as the film goes on, but there are just times where it's like, oh, you're just actually a real nasty piece of work.
Yeah.
For example, when she takes Blanche's lovely budgie and cooks it and then serves it to her. Like, that's that in the context of the story that we saw seemed quite unprovoked to me, and yet we're supposed to take that as a moment where Blanche is like, oh god, I can't cope with this anymore, she's going mad, I need to get her committed. What is it exactly that sets that off in Jane? Because presumably she's not serving up, like, dead animals, that she finds around the house to her sister every day.
Yes, because ultimately, we're supposed to accept that the inciting incident was the car accident that left Blanche disabled. And that was, 25 years earlier? Or something along those lines. So, there's too big a gap there. Like, at what point did this become a problem?
I do think the film would have worked a lot better if it had been more immediate. Like, the immediate aftermath of that. But I suppose it's just to make it kind of believable that the two of them have, fallen into obscurity and had these careers kind of plucked from them. And what's
but there you go. Like Blanche has, in one swift moment of this car crash, she's lost her career completely and also lost the use of her legs. That is a massive, traumatic life event. But then we come to her 25 years later, and she seems completely well adjusted to that. She still lives a comfortable life.
I don't know about well adjusted to it. One of the opening scenes is her watching one of her old movies and just fawning over herself in it. Yeah.
Yeah, but that's all right
in a
to
fond
live on
way.
past.
No,
yeah,
but
she's
it's
not
very much
she's not constantly watching films going mental. She's remembering what it was like, but she's not crying going, "Oh my God, I've lost everything," or anything like that. Basically, my point is that all her problems in life come from her sister.
Yeah.
Rather than from her own life. If you know what I mean.
I think the film wants you to think that she is a bit clinging to the glory days in a way that's kind of like she hasn't moved on and is quite sad. I mean, similarly when she gets those letters that her sister had been intercepting and keeping from her, she's,
That was the only thing that I could identify as being a inciting incident in the contemporary era of the film, like the fact that Blanche's old movies are being rerun on television and new audiences discovering as she's getting this new fan mail, but they don't make a big enough point of it.
Before we just jump too far in, can I just take us back? Because I want to make a point about when they're setting up the film, and there's the bit that's set in 1937, when we're establishing, now Blanche is the successful one, and Baby Jane is an annoying, hanger-on. There's a scene, basically, all that gets explained by these two sort of film executives who are watching some rushes, and then they're sort of walking through the thing, and it must be one of the weakest scenes in film history. It's purely exposition. It's really badly written. The acting is just here's a little bit of exposition I have to go. Oh yeah, and it's just badly. I mean, it's not even well filmed to make it visually interesting in any way. I mean, it didn't set me up well, to be honest. That's the beginning of the film.
That whole sequence did really stick out to me this time, and sort of I'm not sure if there's any information that's departed there that they couldn't have figured out how to get in somewhere else in the story.
And it's not like a 30-second scene; it must be about 6 minutes.
Well, I think it rushes through the sort of prequel stuff, setting it all up. The little prologue bits and bobs a bit too quickly. I think the film would have benefited from letting us live with Baby Jane as a young'un for more than the 2 scenes we get, and then this middle bit for some proper material that isn't just a hastily assembled thing with these executives that isn't very good.
Yeah, and give us some emotional subtlety, right? Show us that she's a child star, but she's getting arrogant. Okay, but but then that she's just a total bitch. That's all she is. And then later on, when she's failed, we don't see oh my God, she's despairing, she's turning to the bottle, whatever. We just know that she's being a bitch about it. That's all we get. There's no, and then later on, she's just a bitch now who's going even crazier. There's no journey there at all. And then my kind of the contra problem to that is that I found Blanche to be incredibly irritating in her inability to do anything.
God, yes.
Go to the window and just fucking shout. The neighbour is about 20 feet away from you.
I was going to ask you guys about this. What is that? There's a very specific term, a screenwriting term, to avoid things like this when characters on screen are doing things so blatantly stupid that no one watching the film would actually do, and you kind of lose the sense of reality of it. Because this is what my boyfriend was having. He was well, why isn't she just shouting? Why isn't she?
I kind of because I kept thinking okay, I assume there's a reason that I've missed why she can't just shout out the window. So maybe she should set fire to the house or just outside the house so someone will see. But maybe I think at the time I thought, the house must be far away enough from the road. But then that neighbor keeps coming over, so it doesn't. There's a lot of holes in the logic of it there. And
there's a big moment where she gets to the top of the stairs. Obviously, she can't walk, but she can see the phone at the bottom of the stairs. She's like, "Oh, could I make it? Have I got the strength to get down there?" And she decides not to do it. And then later on, that kind of pays off because she does do it. She does have to make this effort. But it's just like, sit on your ass and slide down the stairs. It'll take you about 20 seconds. It's not...
I mean,
you might get a couple of bruises. It's not going to seriously damage you.
Well, what really annoys me is...
If you were that desperate and you were that scared to get out. But we know... And I wanted to believe that she's thinking... Oh, do you know what, Jane? She's just having a bad day. She'll be all right. Or believe that she's been so put upon for 20 years that she's scared of her. And that kind of it would be a kind of an analogy of a an abusive marriage kind of thing. That kind of fear. But I never got that from her. I just got that she wasn't physically able to get down the stairs, and that was. And
this is what I was talking about earlier about the lack of distinction between when we go from this is just every day for these ladies to oh crap, she actually really wants to get out of here. I don't get the sense that Joan Crawford's been trying for 30 years to get out of this situation. No. I think the film's trying to say, oh no, this has just stepped up another
Something's
level.
Happened,
yeah. But I don't know what that thing is.
Yeah, and similarly, when she does finally get to the phone later on, it really annoyed me that she doesn't just say, like, "Doctor, for fuck's sake, please help. My sister's trying to kill me. Police, get some cops over here. Police, I'm phoning the police now. Police, please come." Just phone, but instead
I'm being kept prisoner in this address. Please come.
Doctor, please, my sister's just coming now and she's gonna fucking kill me, so please, really quick, bring the police. Instead it's this weird thing of like, oh, it's so tense because I know my sister's behind me and now I've got to kind of pretend, like, be very subtle in my... I don't know.
And I think you could do that if you portrayed these characters differently so that you believed that there was a fear of reprisal over and above she's mental and she might just hit me. Because I don't think there's been any physical violence up to that point. I don't think she fears her physically. No. It's a psychological thing. So then when she comes up and just kicks her in the face, it's kind of like, okay, well...
No, she kicks like a mannequin in the face and then they cut back on there.
Oh, this was a question I had, actually. This is interesting. I thought Calvin would be best to answer this. When was it that films were able to do proper fight sequences? and not this badly edited kind of choppy... Because even in the Bond films, the fight scenes are so shit. Because it's like you can see them pulling the punches. You can, like, it's sped up so it looks like someone's falling over. Like, when did you get proper stunt guys and proper fight sequences? And why did it happen?
There were heaps of martial arts films in like the 70s that were doing it, weren't there?
Yeah. I mean, I would argue the Red Grant James Bond fight in The Training from Russia with Love is a great example of a fight scene, but that is, more dynamically shot and lit, I suppose. It's a lot in darkness, so you can't really see.
I mean, these are a couple of older women. I mean, what are you going to get out of them? I guess they're not trying to make it look like the Bourne Identity, are they? It's just shaky camera.
I was surprised at how much they actually pull back from showing the violence, because it's a lot of, you'll see like Bette Davis like kicking thin air and then Joan Crawford recoiling. You never see like foot make contact with Joan Crawford. And even later on in the film when...
you never see the hammer connect with the head.
But even then, like, the Psycho shower scene is a brilliant bit of editing. It tricks your mind into believing that, you have seen something, because the edits are so impressive. But here, it's there's a point in the film where Bette Davis does kill someone. She takes a hammer and bashes a maid over the head with it. It's all done sort of almost like a 1950s TV show. Like, you just see the maid goes out of frame, Bette Davis comes in, whacks, obviously thin air, and then dramatic music, and we're to believe that she's dead. I was just surprised with how pedestrian those scenes were. And if you were trying to ape Psycho, if you were trying to make another success like Psycho, wouldn't you make more of those moments?
You'd think so, yeah.
Well, I'm glad you brought that up, because another point I made was that this feels like a hack director trying to do Hitchcock. And, it's Robert Aldrich who directed this, and his thing was like, big macho kind of action films, westerns, that sort of thing. This
I think
was a little bit
Hack's
out
a
of
bit
the ordinary for him.
Harsh.
I mean, he was a talented hack. I mean, he knows how to put a thing together, but it felt like someone trying to do something that was out of their sphere.
Yeah, I think that's fair, yeah.
And, like, I would like to have seen the Hitchcock version of this, because it would have been a lot better, and the tension would have been there. I don't think he could make a film with 2 female leads, but...
Although by definition, by pushing himself to make something outside of his usual, sphere of what he does, wouldn't that make him not a hack?
No, because he tried to make it fit to what he already knew.
He's trying to grow artistically, more of a failed artist than a hack.
Okay.
I certainly think this is probably his most famous film as well. I think.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, I mean, obviously he produced and directed it, so as much of his baby as
Jane. What?
Well,
That doesn't work at all.
What? Yeah. So yeah, I think we're all on the same page here.
Yeah. I wanted more ambiguity in terms of their relationship and more power play. Blanche needed to have a point where she exerted power because, look, hey, it's my money, or hey, I can get the attention where you can't. Whatever it needed to be.
Yeah,
and we never got that.
I think I've kind of had a similar experience to you with Alan, in that I kind of were basically that, like, the opening scenes are great. I think, set in the olden days, as baffling as it is that a girl tap dancing was considered entertainment. And that, like, that boy wants her to sing that fucking awful song.
I've written a letter to Daddy.
Oh my God! I mean, if that passed for entertainment back then no wonder there was a depression. But it's a great few scenes that, I think they are actually very well crafted scenes, those first few, how they're put together, and then we just suddenly thrown into this crap with the executives that's rubbish, and then it's just two old women talking, and it's really boring, and I just kind of tuned out for a good chunk of the film because I was really bored. And then it kind of kicks into gear again as Jane becomes completely unhinged, and it becomes this kind of psycho knockoff. No,
I think the film does have pacing issues. I think you could cut a good half an hour out of this easily, and you wouldn't miss it. I forgot actually how long this thing was until I started watching it, and then I was like, scenes are taking a long time to get to a very just minor point, or Joan Crawford and the maid have about 10 minutes talking about the fan letters that the character's been receiving, and they literally take about 10 minutes to get through. Okay, these were delivered from the TV station. Jane's obviously hidden them or sent them, chucked them in the bin or whatever.
Yeah, and then at some point we introduce a big pianist. He's not that
Victor
relevant
Buono.
to the story, is he?
He looks exactly like Chris Chandler in some shots. Did you notice that, Calvin?
It's just his physique.
Yeah, I did actually. Yeah, I was thinking that. Victor Buono appears about halfway through the film as sort of like a washed-up, classically trained, classically educated musician, because Jane has put out an advertisement in the paper that she, I think spurred on by the fact that her sister's movies have been played on TV, and she's getting, reclaiming some form of glory. Jane feels like she must now do the same thing, and she wants to revive her terrible old act.
Yeah, and we get a sequence where she performs that song that was bad enough to watch when it was a little girl doing it, but when it's an older woman and she's not quite hitting the notes properly.
Not quite.
That's the point.
No, I know, but honestly, that is one of the most unpleasant things I can think of in filmic history. It's up there with Jay doing the crazy frog on the Inbetweeners for like stuff that I struggle to sit through because it's so cringy.
It's my favourite scene in the film. I love it because it's so excruciating and because it's so sad. And
yeah, that's definitely the point. That's definitely the point where we're supposed to feel sorry for her.
I just got annoyed, to be honest. I was just
yeah,
like, oh,
I mean,
God,
my
stop
reaction...
it. This is horrible. Stop it.
I guess my reaction was more like, oh, so she is definitely supposed to be mental then, rather than just nasty. And so I guess that's why you feel more sorry for her, and it kind of works.
And I think Victor Buono plays it really well. Like, for the most part, he's like, during these whole scenes, he's like putting on a fake English accent, and they're having some comic relief. And then he starts like just tinkling, playing the piano, and she comes in and sings, and he's at first like, wonderful, he says, and he's like doing it through gritted teeth. He's just like, what the fuck am I doing? Like, he knows how absurd the situation is. But then the camera cuts to him at one point while she's singing and dancing, and you just see a look on his face that's sort of like, oh fuck, this is like actually pretty scary. This is pretty gnarly. Like, what is going on here? And then I love after that scene, after that bit, they're talking about how much money she's gonna pay him to be, help her revive her act. And he's like considering it. And then for a moment, they have a shot of Jane like looking him up and down, like just like checking him out kind of thing. And then her smile grows slightly bigger. And they don't really do anything with it, but I think we're supposed to think that she's kind of got the hots for him.
Oh, absolutely, we are. There's a few little moments like that, not just that one.
Yes, but I got the sense that it was more like she was so desperate for anyone to pay attention to her, so that even he was, and so she was like, well, I'm a glamorous beauty. Of course, he's looking at me as if I'm a kind of hot prospect, so I'll look at him that way. That was one of the more subtle aspects of it, which was nice.
Well, I think there are quite a few subtle elements in here, just behind motivation and whatnot. Like, they never say, I don't think they ever have Jane say, oh, well, your movies are, you're getting attention for these old movies. I want to get attention for my old crap as well. I don't know if they ever say that, but I think that's what we're to believe.
Yeah, it certainly comes across, definitely. I think that, whatever he's, Victor Buono, is that his name? The pianist. I think he's probably the best thing in the film as far as I'm concerned.
Oh, he's brilliant. I love him so much. He's hilarious. And his Cockney mother as well that he lives with. She's brilliant.
Oh, I mean, I wasn't a big fan of her, to be a bit broad.
Oh, I love it. I love it when she's playing his secretary. It's really nice. I could just watch a whole film of those two bickering, really. I think this film was he nominated for a Best Supporting Actor award for it? Yes, he was.
Really?
Academy Award, Best Supporting Actor.
Ooh.
And I think this he died at a very young age, but...
That must have really been like salt in the wound for, what's her name, who got all upset about the Oscars and not giving her
Joan Crawford, yes. Yeah. I guess we'll get there, but because once he appears in the film, it moves at a much quicker pace. We have like the fights, the beating up scene, and Joan Crawford is then tied up on her bed. The maid is killed.
And then this is another problem, because after that phone call point, basically Joan Crawford's character could be played by a doll. Like, it could be played by a mannequin after that, because she doesn't get a chance to do anything. She barely says anything, and she's tied up. She's just like a MacGuffin by that point. And the story becomes about Jane. Is she going to get caught? And that sort of thing. And so you kind of lose one of your elements then. Like, too much. You lose it too much.
Because she basically just slowly dies for the rest of the film, because she's hardly eaten anything in days. And so she just sort of slowly dies of starvation. And it's a real shame, because to say that you've got these two, rival actresses, like, way past their prime and, like, going all out here, I think it's a shame that you don't have more scenes that make the most of that, until probably the beach scene at the end. But we'll get there.
Hello, listeners. This is the point of the show where we would put an advert if anybody was willing to pay us to flog their crap. But as nobody will, we're going to advertise ourselves instead. So, if you'd like to help us grow and develop as a podcast, then please just take a quick second to like us on Facebook at facebook.com/Diminishing Returns podcast. There you can join in on discussion of the episodes, and of course get first notification of any other news or items that we post. And by liking the page, you're helping us look more popular, and that will hopefully help us reach more people. Do it now! Another thing that annoyed me, that Jane, particularly towards the end, Jane does a lot of things where she kind of goes, "What am I going to do?" And, oh no, they're going to try and stop me. Like, basically speaking her thoughts out loud.
What's that, Sooty?
Yes. And she sold it as well as you can, and that's credit to the actor, but it's just bad writing. And I can tell she's distressed and what she's worried about. You don't have to tell me that. She's just murdered someone. She's obviously freaking out that she's actually just killed someone.
This is it. Like, I think it's what I was saying, that I kind of find it odd that this film was a big hit and is as well regarded nowadays as it is. It's largely because it is so much a B movie in its sensibilities, and it's not like it ever quite transcends that, but somehow it kind of has, because I think it is held up now and regarded as a real cinematic classic, and I don't think it is held up as quite a campy B movie that it kind of is.
Performance-wise, I think Bette Davis is pretty incredible every time she's on screen. Unfortunately, she's on screen a lot. I think she's just really going balls to the wall, and it's over the top and hammy and camp and all those things, but I think it's mesmerising.
Really? See, this is it. I knew we were going to come up against... I knew you were going to love her, but I when I was watching it, I was really paying attention to the performances, because it's the second time I've watched it, and, I was trying to be more analytical, and I don't think there's anything particularly remarkable about the acting, to be honest. It's just kind of... She's just kind of doing it.
I don't know. I think that's definitely something that's lost in time somewhat, because back then acting wasn't quite that committed. It was just like you just come in and do the lines. So that's why I think she's really getting in touch with it. I think it's just a shame that the character hasn't got more there for her to do. It's just batshit throughout.
Do you think we're ready to talk about the ending now?
Yeah, I am.
Because when things go really crazy and Victor Buono obviously sees Joan Crawford, he runs off to tell someone. Bette Davis hops her in a car and they drive to the beach, the seaside. And then she dances around for a little bit, makes sandcastles that she's very proud of.
Well, she reverts to a sort of childlike state, which is the important thing, I think, because we're supposed to be connecting this back to when she was a child star. And so she's regressed back to that, and so we get onto a beach, and she's like, "Oh, I'll play in the sand like a child." And
I don't really like much of the stuff on the beach. It just seems like a really... I quite enjoy, like, the third act of the film, like, the second act of the film, even when they're, her dealing with the kind of psycho/misery type stuff at home. But when they get to the beach, it just feels like such a kind of... that's all you got kind of ending. It's just like...
It's very odd, isn't it?
And then there is a twist that I think I quite like, actually. It's the one element of the ending that I do really quite enjoy and do think's quite an interesting little element of the film.
The twist being...
So obviously it's set up earlier that Baby Jane crashed a car into her sister and, like, broke her legs and ruined her career, and the twist is, actually Blanche was driving the car because she hated her sister as much and crippled herself as a driver, and the sister was just drunk off her face, so, like, after she crawled out of the car, the police assumed she did it. She didn't remember anything, and it's just this kind of role reversal flip on the head of the dynamic to a point you kind of think, oh, they're as bad as each other.
And I think conceptually that twist should work. I bet it works in the book. I think here it doesn't work at all because we haven't had enough setup that Blanche is capable of that. It kind of explains why Blanche is very reticent towards Jane, because perhaps it's led by guilt. But again, we need at least a little bit of sense of setup of that.
Yeah.
And it just doesn't pay off, and I also think it doesn't have time to sink in.
Yeah, I agree with that. And
actually get any feeling out of it. I wasn't even sure when I was watching it if she was just saying this, making this up to make Baby Jane go, "Oh, right, in that case, we're not going to be in trouble. I'm not going to be in trouble anymore. We can go to the police." I wasn't sure if I was supposed to take it seriously or not.
I think it's a good element to the film in that it retroactively makes the rest of the film a lot more interesting. But like you say, perhaps they could have included some elements that would pay off on a repeat viewing. You know, it's
a scene where Blanche is like having a go at Jane, and then she's like has to stop herself and go, "Okay, do you know what? I shouldn't be doing that." Kind of that sense of like. And then Elvira, or whatever the maid's name was, is like, oh, why don't you just tell her to piss off? And she's like, no, I owe her a lot. Like, you know, something like that. Give us any sense of the character between them, like that could be ambiguous.
My problem with the twist is that, I guess, like Saul said, it makes the film sort of more interesting and believable in hindsight. It explains certainly Joan Crawford's character's motivations, but I don't know if it changes much. Like, Jane was always a bitch. We never saw her sort of... I think she's kind of sympathetic, but that's more down to bad parenting.
I think the twist gives Jane a much needed element of sympathy, personally. None of the other attempts to give her a sympathetic character trait really worked for me. This is the only one that landed, was this one, the twist. So I think it recolors how you see both characters. So I like it for that, personally.
Also, by this point, Jane has fully regressed and has gone completely nutty. And so we're seeing her now as a sympathetic character, like, oh my God, she's this tragic figure now. But like 24 hours previously, she's murdered someone, and she's been actually quite vicious and nasty and evil. And although that could be directed by her mental illness, it's very conscious. Whereas by the end, she has completely lost it, and so it's much easier to sympathise with her. And in fact, it's very much shown that, you know, she's a dipsomaniac. She's ruled by her alcoholism, and when she's drunk, she does things that she might not when she's more clear-headed. But then when you see her, she is clear-headed. She does evil things still, but it's just much more cold and calculated. Yeah. So, I don't know. I don't know why I'm supposed to feel sympathetic towards her.
Well, this is it. I mean, I basically don't at all. And then I think the ending's very abrupt and just... not massively satisfying, because it is just her sort of dancing there as the police find a sister on the beach. And
it's a bit of a Sunset Boulevard kind of ending, isn't it? Like, she finds her audience again.
Well, apparently in the book, the police are saying, like, oh, come on, like, where's your sister? Where's your sister? And she just loses the plot completely. And it's not, you don't know in the book whether the sister's ever found or not. Which... in the very closing shots of this, you see the police going, oh, look, she's over there, and wandering over to her and presumably saving her life.
Yeah. I always thought she was dead.
She's already dead by that point.
I always thought she was dead in previous viewings, and for this one, I was less certain of that. For some reason, I remembered seeing, like, her last breath kind of thing during that scene with her talking to Jane. But we don't get that.
No, I both times I watched it, it never even crossed my mind that they hadn't saved her. I don't know.
I love the ending.
I think the ending would be pretty good, actually, if it was like what Alan just described, and we don't even know if they are going to be able to find her out on the beach in it, because she does just look like any sunbather.
Just quickly before we move on, I really hate the music, the score.
It's very overscored, isn't it?
Oh, it's so annoying. It's like Mickey Mouse kind of scoring, like just overly punctuating movements. And I mean, if this wanted to be Psycho, it needed something as revolutionary as that score, something as chilling and suspenseful. But this, it feels, again, it just feels like something from like the 1950s television. Yeah, really don't like it.
I can't say I noticed it particularly, but that means I didn't.
How can you not?
Like it.
It's like
either.
Boom, 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 boom.
I think it's I just
like Joan Crawford's like going for the phone, and it's boom, 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 boom.
I think I'm just used to that from films from back in the day. I think I just kind of tuned it out.
Yeah, but not from the 60s, not from this point.
I for whatever reason, I was thinking it was from the 50s when I was watching it, so maybe I was more forgiving of some things I put up to just old school mannerisms. But
are we ready to move on? Do we have any more about the film?
Well, I've got
to kind of talk about what came after.
I've got a question just why is it stylized very specifically as whatever happened to Baby Jane as two separate words instead of whatever as one word?
Because it's whatever happened to Baby Jane, not whatever happened to Baby Jane.
Did whatever just not exist in the 60s? Have we not merged the two words together yet? Is that what this is? Or
Whatever happened to Baby Jane? Whatever happened to Baby Jane? I don't know.
I've got a quiz I've just thought of. Here's the first question: Who framed Roger Rabbit? What's eating Gilbert Grape? Who's afraid of Virginia Woolf?
Oh, you know what? For the longest time before I watched this, I couldn't distinguish this film from Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. I just kind of thought they were the same film. Then I actually watched one of them, and it's like, oh yeah, okay, it's nothing like that other one.
So, something that we've kind of glossed over, I think we've focused very much on the film, and I think that's the right thing to do, because I think it's been talked about so much, and you can read so many articles about Bette Davis and Joan Crawford's fractured relationship, their rivalry, the terrible things that they did to each other while filming.
You know that scene when she finds her on the telephone? She improvised kicking her in the head. She just did it on set. They were wasn't expected.
Well, apparently she did actually give her a bit of a kicking at some point, which may be why the sequence is as it is currently filmed, where the two of them are clearly not in the same room when it's being done. But then, of course, Joan Crawford retaliated by wearing weights when Bette Davis had to drag her body along the floor. And put Bette Davis's back out.
She put on those joke things where you shake someone's hand and it electrocutes them. She put them all over her body, so she's just getting zapped. She just put she just hung used condoms in a trailer, sent her dead rats in the post.
This is it. They could get away with it in this day and age because they just say, "Oh no, we're just method acting." Just really into the character.
She kept phoning her up and asking if her refrigerator was running, and it just got really annoying.
Obviously the two hated each other in real life, allegedly. I recommend everyone go out and see Feud. Find it wherever you can. It's a really, really great show. I think it's only about 10 episodes. Chronicles the making of Baby Jane, and then beyond that, and it just kind of focuses on Davis and Crawford's relationship and what that feud meant. It's really, really brilliant. Honestly, one of the best series I've ever seen.
There's a really great scene in one of the episodes towards the end where one of them puts cling film over the toilet and waits for the other one to go, and she gets just wets herself. It's horrible, but it's really funny.
I appreciate bitterness as much as anyone, but they do just sound like a couple of old bitches being nasty to each other.
Well, that's
it. Nasty to other people, nasty to their kids. Both of these people have had a child print a horrible "my mother was a total bitch" autobiography. Yeah. But I think this is sort of telling of what Hollywood was at one time. I mean, both these women were products of kind of unpleasant childhoods, and that's the sort of people that went to become actors because it wasn't a nice or glamorous job. Yeah. Especially theatre was one thing, but film in the 20s. And so it attracted these people who had no direction and kind of no one looking after them. And therefore, these damaged people were taken advantage of by the studios and treated like shit, really. And it's no wonder that they end up as mad and nasty people.
So, obviously, this film was a massive success. So they wanted to capitalize on that and get a sequel out pretty quickly, which would have been Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte, which wouldn't have been a direct sequel, but it was a similar sort of, Bette Davis and Joan Crawford are two middle-aged women who just do dreadful things to each other for 2 hours. So it was supposed to be Bette Davis and Joan Crawford.
It was supposed to be called Whatever Happened to Cousin Charlotte as well.
Yes, it was. Yeah. Except the roles were going to be switched, so it was going to be Betty Davis, who was the sort of the sweeter, nicer of the two. Well, that was the idea, but apparently Betty Davis had Robert Aldrich's ear a bit more on the set of this production. I mean, certainly she had the clout of having been nominated for the Oscar for the previous one. I think there was one story about, like, Joan Crawford, like, took a break from filming to go and have a nap, and then basically they were out shooting in this location and no one woke her up, and so they just left her out on the location. She had to find her own way back. So she quit and got sued by the studio, and then they brought in Olivia de Havilland to play the Joan Crawford part. Yeah, so Hush Hush Sweet Charlotte, saw it a while ago, haven't seen it recently, but I remember it not being as good as Baby Jane. Though it was still nominated for plenty of Oscars, and also starred Victor Buono.
Oh. It does strike me like the way to follow it up would be a spiritual sequel, which is what it sounds like they tried to do.
Shall we do ratings before we get on to like how we would make our sequels?
I gave it 5.
Okay. As good as Tremors 6.
I give it a 7. Senior 7s. Been a while.
I think I'm gonna go 8, and that's come down quite a bit from previous viewings. Like before I rewatched it for the this review, I would have probably said, "Oh, it's a 10 out of 10. I love it. It's brilliant." And I still think there's a lot of great stuff in it. Like I know we've focused on a lot of the flaws.
Yeah.
In our discussion,
I feel like I've come across a lot more negatively than I meant to. So Alan's steering the conversation. That's what that is.
Well, no, I think it was good because a lot of these flaws like just occurred to me on this viewing, and I'd never really seen them before. But I think there's it's still a good thriller.
Yeah, I like I say, as a kind of pulpy B-movie noir-y, thrillery horror. I think it does the trick for what it is.
Right, so shall we talk about how we could approach something, well, I would say sequel, but I think the obvious thing is a modern remake.
That is the obvious thing. And I'm intrigued to have a casting discussion if nothing else. So, I mean, Meryl Streep's obviously who you cast, right?
Yep.
All right.
We're thinking of who would go next to her.
Yeah, this is the tough bit.
Also, she's not washed up. Like, the whole point of Betty Davis and Joan Crawford doing this was that they needed that extra career revitalization because they were of a certain age, they weren't being hired for anything anymore.
I don't think you need that meta element to it, though, do you? I mean, who is a washed up?
Well, that was my thing, yeah, because Meryl Streep can have any role she wants. I mean, I would have loved Margot Kidder to be one of them.
What about Angela Lansbury?
Or just go super old with it. 80 odd years old.
You could do this film with Olivia de Havilland. She's still alive. She's like 103. And Angela Lansbury and Kirk Douglas is the pianist. Let's get some. I want jobs for centenarian actors. Come on,
who's going to play Kirk Douglas's mother?
Catherine Zeta-Jones.
Let's go the opposite direction. Let's have Lindsay Lohan.
Wait a minute. I know you have. It's Sigourney Weaver.
Yeah, she'd be really good, actually. But in which part? Jane? No, I'd see her more as Blanche.
I can't see her being Jane, no. You need someone who can really let loose to be Jane. The thing I was thinking of all the time I was watching this was Misery. So, Kathy Bates.
Oh, yeah.
Same, yeah.
And she is also in Feud.
The thing is, we've already seen Kathy Bates go completely unhinged. Like, we saw Kathy Bates go unhinged in Misery, and then we saw Kathy Bates, like, multiply that by 20 in season 6 of American Horror Story, where I don't even know what the fuck she was doing. It's, like, the weirdest. But I think we want to see someone who hasn't gone completely unhinged before and isn't known for it, right? Can Michelle Pfeiffer go completely mental? Do you think that would work? Have we ever seen that?
Ooh!
She tried it with Catwoman.
Ooh, I think her and Sigourney Weaver would work very well together, actually.
What about Helena Bonham Carter?
Ooh!
Oh, yes.
I mean,
Of course.
we know
yes.
she can go completely mental unhinged, but maybe in the other role, that'd be... Because I think you want someone who's not known for going crazy in the unhinged role, so they can kind of...
I think that's why Michelle Pfeiffer's my favourite.
Yeah. Michelle Pfeiffer and
so
Helena
far.
Bonham Carter would be an interesting pairing, though. I'd be quite intrigued to see that.
Yeah.
What changes would you make to the story? How would we update it and make it better?
Ooh, quicken the pace.
She's got to get rid of her mobile phone. Take her iPad away at the start. She smashes it. That's one of the first things she does. She smashes her iPad.
No, but she's like a confused old woman. She doesn't know how to use it anyway.
So she has all this technology, and she's like, "Ooh."
And instead of a piano, he uses a keyboard. In fact, can we go full on with that? It's not like he's not like a pianist. He's like a full on like Kraftwerkian synthesizer player from an out of work like band that was big in the 80s, but. And you get someone like Kevin Eldon to play it.
No, you get Adam Sandler to play it. And he just plays these tinkly little songs on a guitar. If they were famous, one of them was famous as a child, that would have been in what, like the 60s?
70s, really.
Yeah. Yeah. 70s.
So it's Jodie Foster.
Yes.
Yeah.
And she's reliving. She wants to become the girl out of Taxi Driver again.
Yeah.
She wants to repeat the performance, harking back to when she was playing a child prostitute.
Harking back to when what's that guy called? He tried to assassinate the president to impress her. Harking back to those days, the glory days.
So we could definitely add in a bit more ambiguity about their relationship and sort of do that.
Oh yeah,
better.
Everything we've spoken about it with regards to the weaknesses of it all. Really, the more overt setups for things, the more subtlety to other bits, the no need for the actors to be like, "Whatever will I do?" and all that sort of stuff.
He's going to call the police.
Set it in a house far away from the road, just so that it's, you've not got the neighbour snooping around.
Definitely. Just get rid of that whole neighbour character altogether.
But then you could have the milkman comes around or something, and then you can have this moment where she has a chance to do something and can't for some reason.
Yeah. Or maybe
that's the proper tension.
Can we have a neighbour character, but you only ever see like the forehead up over the fence? And he comes round and they just have little chats, but
it just gives him advice and I think it should be all female cast. So your the big pianist could be played by a woman as well, and then
Melissa McCarthy.
Just because they're fat.
Not
even like...
Yeah.
Well, she's a comic actor.
Not irrelevant to the character that he's fat. It doesn't matter.
It is a little bit.
Why? Because
I think there's an air of like the implicit infatuation that Jane has for him, and you kind of meant to think, but he isn't a dishy young man at all. It's kind of tragic that she's...
Okay, we have that.
I think he's meant to be gay. Like the actor certainly was.
You can't tell these days.
There's the occasional little hint, and I'm sort of like, I think we're supposed to think he's a very feminine.
We get that character. We get that character played by Chaz Bono. You got the best of everything there. You can't go wrong. You've ticked every box.
Well, shall we leave it there?
Thank you for listening. We hope you enjoyed this little foray into the past. But if you prefer your films in colour, then don't worry. We've got you covered next week as we jump back on board the Marvel train to look at Ant-Man. And if you can't wait that long, then go to dimreturns.com, where we've already tackled pretty much every other bloody Marvel film. Alright, see you next week.